In today's detailed weather forecast, we're tracking a couple of powerful snowstorms. The first storm is expected to impact the desert Southwest, then the Midwest, then the eastern seaboard, followed by an even bigger, more powerful snowstorm by the middle of next week. So in today's detailed weather breakdown, we will break down all those details on these two storms. Welcome back, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office for January the 2nd, 2024. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, we have a lot to talk about. Big storms, maybe some blizzard conditions, and of course some strong winds and severe weather with these storm systems that do try to develop by this weekend into early next week. So here's a look at the very latest European model for January the 2nd, 2024. And as we can see here, we have a couple of systems to track. The first one here is very weak. This is going to only impact the deep south with a little bit of rainfall. But the bigger storm system is out here across California. That's going to bring quite a bit of rainfall for Sacramento, for the Bay Area spots like San Jose, San Francisco. If you're in Fresno, if you're in, Stockton, if you're in the foothills of the Sierra, we're talking a lot about rainfall. Even the Cascades there of Oregon and Washington could also pick up a lot of low elevation rain and some pretty intense snowfall for the higher elevations, but this is going to get more intense by overnight tonight. The blue colors there over California, over the mountains, I should say, is showing you just how heavy the snowfall rates are going to be. We're going to pick up quite a bit, maybe over a foot of snow with this first system, and then eventually when we go into Thursday morning, January the 4th, that system goes into the Four Corners. So if you are in northern Arizona, if you are in New Mexico, quite a bit of snowfall is anticipated. Now, take note of our system here. This is going to be a little guy, not our big system at all of what we're going to be dealing with by the end of this week into the weekend. By Friday afternoon, January the 5th, 2024, we got this storm system. And this is not your system that you are seeing down there across Texas and Louisiana tonight. But this is going to be more stronger because there's more dynamics to work with. So moderate to heavy rainfall is anticipated over much of Texas, especially the southern portion, including for Louisiana and Mississippi. And this is for Friday. And then going forward, this is when it really gets nasty. We got ice that could potentially accumulate over portions of the Appalachians, some of those valleys where we get cold air trapped at the surface. We get warmer air aloft, so temperatures above freezing. So when we start off with snow, that melts to rain and then refreezes on contact, and that's what we call freezing rain. And that's the pink color on your screen. And then it really gets nasty by the time we go into Saturday night into Sunday, January the 6th and the 7th. In fact, if we take a look at the northeast sector here, we are talking quite a bit about a lot of snowfall. And this has been already made headlines on the Weather Channel. Even a lot of people on YouTube like Direct Weather, Weatherman Plus, Pal Ponder, as well as Ryan Hall Extra, really talking about how big this system is actually going to be, because it truly is going to be big, as you can see there on your screen with a lot of the blue colors. Big accumulation across I-95 in northern Missouri, as well as Connecticut, if you are in Nantucket, if you're in portions of Rhode Island, Massachusetts, if you're in Pennsylvania, much of New York, as well as Vermont, New Hampshire, you're going to get quite a bit of snowfall out of this. Even Cape Cod could get a little bit of snow, but it all depends on the track and timing of this system too. So now we're going to compare the latest or kind of previous European model runs, okay? So this is the 12Z run from this morning. If we look at the 0Z, you can see it was further south, okay? So there has been trends northward with where the snow is going to fall, kind of back and forth. But we know somewhere in here, potentially right in this little area that I circled, could get quite a bit of snow. at least over 6 inches in many areas, which would be the biggest snowstorm in a couple of years for some locations. So while that winter storm is in progress across the northeastern US, we're also focusing on, again, on what goes on across California and Nevada. This is a very active pattern that we're entering where we have multiple big snowstorms that are coming. All right, so you thought it's quiet now. Well, it's going to get much more active. Actually, kind of active now, but it's going to get more active by the time we go into the weekend and early next week. So that system goes through. Then the next one goes over the Four Corners. More heavy snow for the Intermountain West, like California, Nevada, and the Pacific Northwest. This system, by the way, is much colder than that first system that you see over the Northeast. And so this is going to be more dynamic, a lot more baroclinic energy to work with here for extensive deepening, as we can see. So by January the 9th, we can see how explosive this gets. I mean, wow. Calm ahead future with this. We got the cold front right here. We got some baroclinic occlusion going on with the front. And then we have another warm front that's draped over, actually down here more so over Texas. So where this warm front is able to advect and how far north it's able to get will depend on how deep this surface low actually gets. If this low is able to get very deep and be a little bit further north, we might see that warm front advecting a little further north. And let's hope the warm front does not advect very far north, because there could be some big time severe weather. And that's why the Storm Prediction Center has already issued a slight risk for severe weather over New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Gulfport, Mobile, Pensacola, Panama City, Apalachicola. If you're in Houston, College Station, Galveston, Beaumont, yeah, you're under a slight risk for day 7. This is pretty far out. And for the Storm Prediction Center to even go slight risk this far out is a big deal. Then by January the 9th, we can see that the Euro is not as optimistic. For some reason, probably due to the lack of colder air that is coming in out of the north, which I think this run is a little bit underdoing it, okay? But that doesn't mean that I am witch casting on, oh, we're going to have a big storm system. I hope we do. No. There's a lot of uncertainty in the models, and we can see just how much there is still to be ironed out. I still think there's going to be quite a bit of snowfall over the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes with this second system, even so it's not showing up on the latest Euro model, and then eventually into the Northeast. And by the way, that is very strong by a lot of means, with very strong northwest winds on this side. We got strong southeasterly winds in the right front quadrant, where we have a lot of divergent flow aloft that lowers the surface pressure, mass response, and we get a very dynamic system. But this one, not as snowy like our previous European model runs until we look at the GFS. So quickly looking at the GFS model, again, we want to compare two different models, because some of you in the comment section were wondering, like, David's using only one model? Let's use a couple. So this is the GFS, or the American model. And when we go forward, of course, lots of snow for the mountains tonight for the California region, lots of valley rainfall, strong winds, definitely a big system, okay? Not exceptionally big, but definitely a impactful one. So that moves into the Four Corners on Thursday, and then eventually moves into the deep south. Less snow with this one at first, because again, this is the first one, and then the bigger one comes in behind it. But still, this one could deliver a lot of snow. All that blue, very similar to our European model, only that the GFS is a little bit more bullish, and we will have to wait and see if the GFS is on to something or the European model. But long story short, there will be some big impacts for this upcoming weekend, for January the 6th through the 8th, as that system moves through. But then it doesn't come alone. It's going to bring a brother or a sister with it. And that's the second system for this weekend. That moves again into the desert Southwest, out of the western U.S., out of the Pacific Northwest. And then because of this trough is a lot deeper, more dynamics to work with, this could deepen more explosively. And we got to really watch the models. There's been a lot of wiggle room on exactly how this is going to play out. By the way, I just realized that I was using the 06Z run. More on that in just a little bit. We will be comparing that, by the way, because there is some very concerning outcomes to that. But it is also still showing. Look at a lot of snow there across the upper Midwest and also for the Great Lakes. Then eventually into the Northeast, bring more rounds of snowfall. But again, this system is a little bit of uncertain on exactly how amplified will this get, how strong, and how much even severe weather could there be with it. Now, the reason why I say that is if we look at our 06Z run from last night, we can see just how much more dynamic this is. Look at that. Very, very classic comma shape. Now, in this run, it's a little further north. So there's a lot of wiggle room between run to run inconsistency here. And until we get a straightforward forecast, we're going to keep this as probabilistic. But right now, or probabilistic. But either way, these two storms will be impactful. Long story short on that. And then maybe a third one out there, but we're not even going to worry about that yet since it is too far out on our radar. Actually, it is still a possibility according to our GFS model, but anything after that, we just don't know. So now, how much snowfall could fall with the first snowstorm? That's the nor'easter. That is going to be impacting the extreme northeast, maybe for portions of the mid-Atlantic coast, but in the form of rain. So right now, the latest GFS, the 12Z American model, does indicate that there could be 6 to 12 inches of snow stretching all the way from central Indiana into Ohio, like Columbus. If you're in Baltimore, if you're in central Pennsylvania, if you're in northern New Jersey, if you're in central southern New York, even downtown, you might get maybe 1 to 3 inches. But again, exactly where that snow line sets up, the benchmark is what we are looking for here. This surface low is a little further north than what it's showing here, then New York City will not get snow at all. Versus if the surface low is a little further south, drags more colder air out of Canada, we could see maybe a foot or more of snow. How about that? So right now, there's a lot of wiggle room, and I'll compare that in just a second. Portions of, say, Nantucket as well as Massachusetts could get 10 to 15 inches of snow. So now looking at our 06Z run, we can see just how different the outcome here is. Either New York getting maybe a foot or not. And when we look at previous model runs, there has been this notable shift in the track. And we'll see if that continues. If this moves further north, we may not see any snow at all over Long Island. So right now, it's not a done deal. This could still shift further south. But long story short, definitely some snow to look forward to for people that have not had a lot of it this year. In fact, a big snow deficit right now, or what we call a snow drought. Looking at the European model now, as far as that snowfall forecast goes, again, pretty similar with the GFS. In fact, the European has trended closer to the GFS, which means maybe the GFS sees the pattern a little bit more than the European model. And then, of course, our Canadian model, we can't forget about that one. 3 models I'm comparing here showing quite a bit of snowfall. But even so, this has been all over the place with exactly how much snowfall will accumulate based on the track, amplitude, how much colder air comes in out of the north behind the system or within the system on the northern fringes, and how much warm, moist air is able to wrap all the way around the dynamic system. Now, to our second system, I wanted to show you all the snowfall totals with that, because a lot of you are probably wondering, how much snowfall am I going to get, David? Well, because there's a lot of wiggle room in the deterministic forecast, we're looking at our ensembles, okay, which are a blend of different members. So one member might show 2 feet of snow, and then the other member might show 2 inches of snow. We blend these all together to get an ensemble forecast. And so the European has 51 different individual members that make 51 different potential outcomes. And right now, the average outcome is that the Midwest and the upper Midwest could see as much as 2 to 6 inches of snowfall, whereas the Northeast might get a little more. In the higher elevations favored here, maybe as much as 6 to 12 inches. Now, this has also been kind of wiggling around a little bit, adding a lot of uncertainty in the forecast. Some ensemble members show more snow while some have a little less. So again, there's still a lot of details to iron out here. One thing's for sure, though, I wanted to point out is quite a bit of snowfall here over the Cascade range of Oregon and Washington, which has been pretty well modeled with some pretty intense cold systems moving into that area. When we look at our American ensemble forecast, we can see potentially 6 to 12 inches of snowfall for the extreme Northeast, maybe for portions of the Great Lakes. So a similar outcome here between these two, but especially the GEFS really favoring the Northeast a little bit more versus our Euro model favoring more into southeastern Quebec and southern Ontario, Canada. Hopefully I got those two states right. I can never figure that out because they look so similar. Which one is Quebec? You can let me know in the comments. All right, so the GFS again, the ensemble, pretty aggressive. So now, how much rainfall can you expect out of these two systems together? Okay, so this is all the way through Wednesday next week, and you all are probably like, dude, stop forecasting that far out. Again, there is a potential outcome here of seeing quite a bit of rainfall. In fact, for the sake of things, we're probably going to use the ensemble forecast because that's probably the more realistic outcome, the probabilistic. And we can see maybe 1 to 2 inches of rainfall for the southeastern U.S. for the mid-Atlantic. Whereas if we go to our ensemble forecast from the Euro, also pretty similar with most of the rainfall that could fall over western Florida, where you might get up to 5 or so inches. So quite a bit of rainfall, and that could lead to more flood concerns. Not much across California, of course, once we get past this weekend, as maybe some drier weather does return. So now, looking at our 500 millibar wind chart here, I always like showing you all this because this tells us how dynamic these systems could actually become. So of course, we have a little short wave that is moving across the deep south today. That's bringing some thunderstorms, some light to moderate rainfall. That's not going to be a nothing bigger, right? It's not going to be a huge issue at all. It's this system over California that will be. And so this is for Wednesday morning as we go all the way in, and my thing likes to kind of act funny. So going forward here, we can see there's our disturbance. So a pretty deep one, by the way. Not very, I mean, the freezing line's not down into Oklahoma, but still you can take note of this trough that is in place. So there is limited amount of deepening with this one because the dynamics are not very much there yet. And then eventually there is your system that moves all the way across the eastern seaboard, and you can see how stretched out this is. So we're not seeing a big, tightly knotted looking trough here that would otherwise bring a lot. But what comes next is just exactly what I showed you all with the knotted jet that comes down from the northwest into the U.S., of course, into the deep south. Look how deep this is. Very, very deep. This is neutrally tilted, by the way, and that's why the Euro is not as optimistic about how much snowfall falls out of this one versus if we go to the 0Z run, see, a little bit more dynamic, right? When it's more dynamic, we get a lot bit more of snow, more baroclinic deepening because we get forcing in the right front quadrant. You can see the wind maximum here, the jet streak. Perfect environment to get severe weather going. And then the 12Z Euro, not as amplified. We'll see if this is the new trend, though, in future model runs, but it does still get fairly amplified and negatively tilted here. So we can see the trough does this. And when we get that, we could get some severe weather over the easternmost portion of the U.S., like Virginia, maybe Maryland, maybe Delaware as well. Now let's take one last look at the wind chart here from the GFS deterministic forecast, and when we play this through, it shows a whole different story, and it still thinks we're going to have a deep trough by the middle of next week. See this? Look at that little piece. That's a sharp wave right there, by the way. And then this goes all the way into the upper Midwest, bringing quite a bit of dynamical lift. A lot of forcing, a lot of moisture to be squeezed out. You can even see the warm front right in here too, where that wind maximum, that triangle is located. So now, one other model run that I wanted to show you all is that 06Z run. This is, I don't want to cherry pick, but there is potential worst case scenarios here, what we call our worst case scenario profile. And when we look at this, this is 06Z run from last night. Yeah, if that is that far south at 519 decameters, you can sure bet there will be severe weather. For sure, 500 millibar jet there at 133 knots. We look at our 10,000 level jet, or 10,000 foot, I should say, 700 millibars, about 118 knots. And then when we get down to the surface almost, man, that is a deep system. And yeah, if that warm front is able to lift far enough north, we could see significant severe weather. We'll have to kind of really work out on exactly where this surface low is going to deepen, when is it going to deepen, and just how deep is it going to get, because that all plays a role into that severe weather setup for the middle of next week. Well, anyways, folks, if you did enjoy today's detailed weather discussion, please consider subscribing. You guys are really awesome. And I want to thank you all for sharing yesterday's video. We got over 250 shares. So thank you all for that very much, because YouTube's algorithm recognizes that, oh, there's more shares, more people are liking it, and the YouTube algorithm is likely to share this with a larger audience. So keep up the great work, folks, while I keep up the great work here in the home weather office. I'm keeping you all updated here with what is coming for the weekend into early next week. Brace yourself, folks. Big storms, blizzards, and severe weather are looking likely.